Good morning. It's Thursday, the 6th of February. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast coming to you from ARIRANG's news centre here in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. For the first time in more than 3 years, the two Koreas will hold reunions of families separated since the Korean War. The family meetings will take place at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort from February 20th to the 25th. President Park Geun-hye stresses the need for drastic and bold deregulation to achieve economic growth. She tells the government to stamp out lax management in the public sector and establish laws to root out corruption. Plus, in a scathing report, the United Nations demands the Vatican immediately remove all clergy known or suspected of child abuse. It also says the Catholic Church put its reputation before the protection of children. But we start with the very welcome news that the two Koreas have finally reached an agreement on a new round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War. 100 people from each side of the border will reunite with their loved ones later this month in the first gathering of its type in more than 3 years. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
After just 4 hours of discussions, the two Koreas agreed on Wednesday to resume the long-suspended reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
The Koreas have agreed to hold a round of family reunions from February 20th to the 25th at Mount Kumgang.
The divided family members selected for last year's cancelled reunions will take part, with 100 South Koreans meeting with their loved ones in the first round and another 100 North Koreans taking part in the second round. A team of South Korean engineers will cross the border on Friday to check on facilities at the Mount Kumgang resort, and a South Korean delegation will follow 5 days ahead of the event. The planned reunions coincide with South Korea's annual joint military exercises with the United States, which run from late February through April. North Korea had earlier warned that the humanitarian event could not take place during the military drills, and experts had pointed to the possibility of the North making a counter-proposal on the reunion dates. However, the upcoming drills were not a major issue during the talks.
There was no specific mention by North Korea of the South Korea-U.S. joint military drills, nor a call for the military exercises to be canceled during the talks.
Regarding North Korea's last-minute cancellation of a round of family reunions last year, the ministry said the two sides agreed that such an incident should not happen again. Millions of Koreans were separated by the Korean War more than 6 decades ago, and considering their ages, the time to see their loved ones one last time is running out. The two Koreas agreed to meet for another round of Red Cross talks following the family reunions to discuss a wide range of humanitarian issues, which includes holding the family reunions on a regular basis. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
A group of lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives have sent a message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, urging Pyongyang to allow hundreds of thousands of Korean Americans in the U.S. to reunite with their long-lost relatives in the North. The 4 lawmakers, including Democrat Charles Rangel from New York, also called for the immediate release of Korean-American Kenneth Bae, who has been detained in the North for over 1 year on charges of planning to overthrow the regime. In a copy of their letter obtained by Reuters Wednesday, the U.S. lawmakers said Pyongyang had done the right thing by releasing Merrill Newman, an 85-year-old Korean War veteran detained for a few weeks late last year, and asked for the North to make further progress on the humanitarian front by letting Bae go free. As she enters her second year in office, President Park Geun-hye started her check-in with government ministries and offices, where for the next 3 weeks she will be briefed on their detailed plans to achieve her policy goals. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju reports.
How well have government ministries and offices performed the tasks set by the Park administration over the past year? The Office for Government Policy Coordination handed in report cards to President Park on Wednesday for the first time in government history. Out of the 140 listed tasks, 21% were said to be on the right track, 60% received satisfactory marks, and around 20% got poor grades. Now, as for categorizing the tasks into President Park's 4 major goals, the government did well in laying the foundation for a peaceful reunification last year, receiving high marks in 41% of the related tasks, while it got the poorest grades for tasks related to economic revitalization. Topping the evaluation list were the Ministries of Defense, Gender Equality, and Foreign Affairs. Based on the evaluations, each ministry is required to submit plans to enhance their performance for 2014 sometime this month. During the first day of the government status reports, President Park put great emphasis on 2 things: getting rid of unnecessary regulations and normalizing abnormal practices and policies. She ordered ministries to determine the difficulties companies are facing and to devise methods to help them, for example, by capping the total number of regulations. The president also called on ministries to work towards eliminating lax management in the public sector and establish laws to root out corruption. The ministries and offices will be separated into 9 groups based on the issues they deal with to give their status reports. President Park says this is designed to reflect her emphasis on cooperation among related ministries in reaching her administration's key policy goals. The status reports will run through February 24th. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News.
Staying with politics, and the leader of Korea's main opposition party set out his priorities for the year to a packed National Assembly on Wednesday, hot on the heels of the previous day's keynote speech from the ruling party. Kim Jong-un reports.
Addressing the full assembly and members of President Park Geun-hye's cabinet on Wednesday, Democratic Party chief Kim Han-gil said his party will be at the forefront of reforming parliament and party politics.
We will push for the passage of our bill aimed at preventing lawmakers from abusing their privileges. For this, we will work towards setting up an independent ethics committee that can keep a watch on lawmakers and execute the contents of this bill.
Earlier this week, the Democratic Party leadership issued a political reform proposal that centers around scrapping the privileges of lawmakers and includes having all lawmakers report to an independent ethics committee their plans for overseas travel and commemoration ceremonies for the publication of their books. Kim also called for a rigorous reform of the parliamentary system itself. Specifically, he proposed having the parliament open year-round, operating the parliament's budget committee at all times, and constantly carrying out a parliamentary audit of the government. Kim said his party will fight the government's downsized basic old age pension plan, saying President Park must fulfill her original pledge to give all senior citizens aged 65 and above 200,000 won or $185 every month. He also said his party opposes the government's policy to allow hospitals to form for-profit subsidiaries, saying the healthcare sector should be made more public, not less. He stressed that reunification with North Korea is not something that can be obtained overnight.
President Park said reunification will be like a jackpot that has created a rosy fantasy that reunification will come easy and quickly. I am concerned about this situation.
Saying the public needs to agree on how to prepare for a peaceful reunification with North Korea, the Democratic Party chief called for the establishment of a preparatory body comprised of the government, lawmakers, and civic leaders. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
Starting this April, new visa rules for foreigners wanting to marry and live in Korea will take effect. Foreigners will have to prove they have basic Korean language skills, either by passing a language test or completing a language course. As for the Korean partner, he or she will only be eligible to marry a foreigner in Korea if they earn an annual income of roughly $14,000, which is more than 120% the minimum cost of living. The Justice Ministry says the rules are intended to address social problems that arise from international marriages, including domestic violence due to communication difficulties or a lack of ability to financially support the family. In a move certain to shake already fragile Middle East peace talks, Israeli officials have approved building plans for more than 550 new homes in Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem, land the Palestinians want as their capital. Israel's Jerusalem municipality said Wednesday that its planning committee had approved the construction work in 3 settlements in a part of the West Bank that Israel captured in the 1967 war and later annexed. Israel says the initial plans for the new homes were actually approved years ago. Palestinians are furious with the decision, saying it could derail US brokered peace talks, which resumed in July last year. The expansion of Israeli settlements is considered illegal under international law. Syria has missed yet another deadline to hand over its chemical weapons stockpile. The internationally brokered disarmament agreement is now several weeks behind schedule. This latest missed deadline also throws into jeopardy the final June 30th deadline for Syria to completely eliminate its chemical weapons. Syrian officials blame the civil war for the delay and say they are still committed to destroying the country's arsenal. Syria had already missed a December 31st deadline to give up its most poisonous chemical agents. Russia says Syria will start shipping more chemicals out soon, but Western countries believe no further shipments are in the pipeline at the moment. Now, the United Nations has denounced the Vatican for adopting policies it says allow priests to sexually abuse thousands of children over a period of decades. Hwang Jie has the details.
The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child issued a scathing report on Wednesday saying church officials kept quiet about child sex abuse to protect the reputation of the church. The UN body's exceptionally blunt paper also demanded the Vatican immediately remove all clergy accused of child abuse and turn them over to civil authorities.
Another matter was the code of silence that was imposed by the church on children, and the fact that reporting to national law enforcement authorities has never been made compulsory.
The Vatican responded by saying it's committed to defending and protecting the rights of the child. The church complained that it had already introduced many of the changes called for in the report and that the report's conclusions were not up to date. Responding to criticisms about the Vatican's opposition to homosexuality, contraception, and abortion, the church said the world body was trying to interfere with the Catholic Church's teaching and in the exercise of religious freedom. Sex abuse victims, however, welcome the UN's report.
I've been very touched by the recommendations and the conclusions of the report because I feel very validated.
The UN's report called on the Vatican to report back on its progress in 2017. Although the recommendations are not compulsory, the committee expects Pope Francis and the Holy See to act on them. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
Google has tentatively settled a European antitrust probe by promising to display competitor links on its website. The deal ends a 3-year investigation and means Google has avoided what could have been a multi-billion-dollar fine. Under the terms of the agreement, Google will let 3 rivals display their logos and web links in a prominent box, and content providers will be able to decide what material Google can use for its own services. Google will also scrap restrictions that prevent advertisers from moving their campaigns to rival platforms such as Yahoo's search tool and Microsoft's Bing. The deal, which Google has to stick to for 5 years, only applies to Europe. Now, the build-up to the Sochi Winter Olympics has been overshadowed by the threat of terrorism, but the risk may have subsided somewhat after Russian security forces killed the suspected mastermind of recent suicide bombings in the southern city of Volgograd. Russian state media reported Wednesday that Zameltin Mirzayev was shot dead by security forces during a house siege in Izberbash, a town in Russia's Restiv Dagestan region. Another man was killed in the shootout and a third gave himself up. The bombings on Volgograd's public transportation system in December last year killed 34 people and raised security concerns ahead of the Sochi Games. Authorities believe Ms. Zaev sent 2 men to carry out the suicide bombings. And on a happier note, ahead of the official opening of the Sochi Winter Olympic Games on this Friday, the Olympic flame made its way to the host city on Wednesday, and Team Korea was there to hold a welcoming ceremony. Our Song Ji-son has the latest.
After traveling some 65,000 kilometers, climbing mountains, plunging into a lake, and even making its first journey into space on a Russian spacecraft, the Olympic flame arrived in Sochi on Wednesday, ending a 4-month journey. The identity of the final torchbearer is still under wraps, but we do know that the torch will be lit at the main stadium on Friday evening during the opening ceremony. Team Korea held a welcoming ceremony at the Olympic Village on Wednesday, vying once again to finish in the top 10 in the medal count for the 3rd consecutive Winter Games. Seoul is sending its largest number of winter sports athletes to the Games, with 71 on the roster. There were headlines off the ice as well on Wednesday. It was confirmed that Ban Ki-moon will become the first UN chief to give a keynote speech to the International Olympic Committee's General Assembly this week before attending the opening ceremony on Friday. However, other prominent world leaders, including the presidents of the United States, France, and Germany, will not attend, all taking stands against Russia's anti-gay laws. At the opening speech of the General Assembly Wednesday, IOC President Thomas Bach slammed politicians for using the Sochi Olympics as a political platform on the backs of the athletes. Song Ji-son, ARIRANG News.
We are just wrapping up the Lunar New Year holiday, and it's over this extended break that even more Chinese tourists than usual make the short hop across the West Sea to Korea. Looking to capitalize on the extra numbers, local businesses are pulling out all the stops to entice Chinese people to buy their goods and services. Connie Lee has more.
Signs written out in Chinese and friendly ni hao greetings now fill the streets of a major shopping district in downtown Seoul.
Everyone is so friendly here. Workers and guides speak English, so it's easy to get around and buy stuff.
These are all efforts to cater to Chinese tourists, who for the first time outnumbered the number of Japanese tourists to Korea last year.
We're seeing a surge of Chinese tourists mainly because of China's rapid economic development, so more Chinese people want to travel overseas. Now, also distance-wise, China is not that far from Korea, and the visa rules for Chinese tourists visiting Korea eased.
So Korean businesses are taking notice and are getting a bit creative to attract the Chinese guests. At a duty-free shop, coupons are offered inside Chinese-style red envelopes, and special giveaways are rewarded to Chinese shoppers who don't mind the long waits in line to buy their favorite Korean products.
I waited in line for 45 minutes. I just bought 4 boxes of Solasu skincare set.
We targeted Japanese tourists more before, but now we have more promotional events and targeted marketing campaigns for Chinese visitors.
And a 4-star hotel in southern Seoul recently hired Chinese-speaking employees and has dedicated an entire floor just for its Chinese guests.
We've seen the number of Chinese clients at our hotel increase by 30 to 40% over the past 2 years or so.
The hotel also added a new dining menu to please the palates and increase the luck of Chinese tourists.
In China, the number 8 is associated with prosperity and wealth, so it's considered a lucky number. So that's why this restaurant has created a special menu just for its Chinese guests. Now, all the dishes on that menu include 8 different ingredients or have been cooked for 8 minutes.
And the price of each specialty dish? 38,800 won. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, a new wave of privacy firms are coming through here in Korea as more of our lives are uploaded online. These companies say they can air out all your so-called digital laundry and wipe any information about you off the internet, whether it be your banking information or a compromising photo. Paulie reports.
Financial authorities say 20 million credit card holders had their personal and banking data stolen in one of the biggest security breaches in Korea's history. But in the wake of the mass data leak, a new industry is emerging to address people's concerns about their digital information and other online assets. According to Statistics Korea, some of the hottest businesses in this field specialize in protecting your digital identity and ensuring your personal information stays private. So-called digital cleaners track down a wide range of information on you that can be found on the internet and supposedly wipe away any traces of it. Other privacy firms focus on deleting your social networking service profiles and related messages you may regret posting. And a final solution that is becoming increasingly common to include in one's will includes a digital funeral, which completely erases your online identity after you die or transfers it to your next of kin. Taking the idea one step further, many companies are also offering to curate your online reputation in case prospective employers, for example, go snooping around. Some of the most common so-called digital laundry items that they identify and adjust include embarrassing photos or videos, your online purchases, dating profiles, and even your family history. The booming business is due to surging demand as more Koreans are worried about their online privacy. The Korea Internet and Security Agency says the number of cases related to invasion of privacy has nearly tripled, from about 54,000 cases in 2010 to over 177,000 last year. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the latest interview by NBC Sports as they had a chance to sit down with figure skater Kim Jong-un. Now with Ryan Seacrest sitting down with Kim Jong-un, she stated how she feels comfortable going into the Sochi Winter Games, having already experienced the Vancouver Winter Olympics back in 2010. And NBC Sports had a ton of things to say about the Olympic champion, comparing her popularity here in the nation to that of Beyonce and Madonna, as the figure queen showed her English-speaking skills as well.
Before Vancouver, South Korea.
And staying with the Winter Olympics, with the welcoming ceremony taking place yesterday in Sochi, the South Koreans entered the Olympic Village. With 88 nations participating at the Winter Games, Korea was the 18th nation to be welcomed during the ceremony as athletes begin their 20-day stay in the coastal city of Russia. Of the 120 athletes and delegations, 65 will be staying at the coastal cluster, with sledders and biathlon athletes staying at the mountain cluster, which includes the mountain village and the endurance village. And more from the Winter Olympics, many of the athletes who finish with a gold medal earn a bonus. And of course, it's different with each nation, but turns out Kazakhstan offers the highest bonus for a gold medal finish. Despite the GDP per capita being just over $13,000, each athlete who finishes with a gold medal during the Sochi Winter Games will be given a $250,000 bonus, with silver medalists earning $150,000 and bronze medalists taking home $75,000. And you don't even need to finish on the podium, as a $5,000 bonus is given for a sixth-place finish. And now moving over to some Wednesday night's KBL action, we had the Goyang Orions take on Anyang KGC, with the Orions beating KGC 76-66. Meanwhile, KT Sonic Boom taking on LG Sakers. Let's take a look at the highlights. Now a high-scoring game in the first half as KT takes a comfortable 46-39 lead going into halftime, thanks to Oh Young-jun and his 12 points in the first half. In the third quarter of the game, Davon Jefferson scoring 21 of LG's 23 points in the quarter as LG rallies to take the lead before hanging on to take the game 74-73. And finishing things off with some V-League action from last night, the Hunguk Insurance Life Pink Spiders continue to struggle as they lost to GS Caltex 3-1. Meanwhile, with Unicard taking on the Korean Air Jumbos, let's take a look at the highlights. Now, despite Unicard's strong start to the season, they continue to struggle offensively as they lose the first two sets 25-18 and 25-16. Now, their offense does come alive late in the third set, but with Michael Sanchez putting up game-high 32 points, Korean Air takes the third set 26-24 and a 3-0 victory. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Okay, let's get a check on the weather conditions in Korea and around the world. Well, that's all for now. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.